Our sacred text for reflection this week is chapter 15 of the Tao Te Ching. Do you have the patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear? This perhaps always appealed to me because having clear water, or a clear mind in this case, doesn't come easily to me. I usually have endless tasks of to-dos, things to do, people to see, appointments, all running in my head at once, and my mind can become really good at multitasking and remembering things. But when it comes to being mindful, it's far more challenging. I've been wondering during this time of pandemic if meditation and self-care is a real luxury, and feeling kind of guilty if that's the best use of my time during a really strenuous and demanding time. My meditation teacher was reflecting on this question, and he responded in a way that I think is really wise. That what we do to show up for ourselves, for clarity of mind, has a direct impact on the people around us. So even if we're not living with other people, we interact with one another, even in quarantine, whether that's by phone or by computer, or even a stranger 6 feet away on a walk outside. So I found it really interesting going back to this text to find that even in the translations themselves, there is this connection between the inner undisturbed state and the outer state. So in my preferred translation by Stephen Mitchell is the one that I just read to you. Do you have the patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear? The second translation I want to share with you is just slightly different. It says, who can wait quietly while the mud settles? Now, this is a question. The first one is directed directly to the reader or the listener. Now, this one is bigger. It's saying, who among us in our whole community can do that? Now, the third one, I think, is very interesting. The second one is translated by Fu Feng and Jane English. The last one I want to share with you is who can by stillness, little by little, make what is troubled grow clear. So in the original text, there is a connection between, and it can be interpreted in English in all these different ways, that what is happening in our internal state can then affect what in the external world is troubled to grow clear. So there's wisdom deeper in that language that as English readers we wouldn't necessarily see without hearing these multiple translations. And I think that's really fitting for a mindfulness practice, and how we show up for ourselves. As someone who lives with and manages chronic pain, I had the realization a couple of weeks ago during this quarantine that supporting clarity of mind and mental health and spiritual health requires more than I did pre-quarantine. And a physical metaphor made this really clear. Most of the time now, I do pretty well with very little pain as long as I'm getting enough activity and enough stretching and physical care for my body. Sometimes, maybe once or twice a week, I need like a prescription strength ibuprofen. And then a couple of times a year, I need a very strong prescription medication to get me through a pain flare. So I was kind of thinking that my mind should take care of itself, that this is the equivalent of a mental pain flare, but I should just be doing stretching extra well that I would usually do, and that should be enough. Well, that's not true in our physical body, so why should that be true in our mental health? We like to think that our minds will just take care of themselves, but that's not true. We have to take care of them just like any other part of our bodies. And this is wisdom that goes back millennia. So we think about these in neurological terms. Because of our scientific research and discovery, this is a great way for us to understand what's happening neurologically. And it's fascinating and opening all sorts of ways to treat the mind and treat mental illness and promote health and wellness. which then has a direct impact on our bodies because it's interconnected, and then on our being in the community. But for millennia, the careful observers of the human condition in our religious traditions have known this to be true. And in every religious tradition, there are contemplative spiritual practices to bring calm to the mind and the nervous system. So in the Western tradition, these are chants, the monastic communities, Lectio Divina, which is a contemplative form of reading sacred text in a meditative way, meditative forms of prayer. Church music is part of that, and that's something we practice here at First Unitarian. And in the mystical traditions throughout the world, there are ways to tap into this physical reality of how our bodies and minds are wired. And so it is an important practice. And I like to think that if I do a little bit, then that's all I need. And it turns out not to be true. It's very much like exercising. You know, you start like, I'm going to start this new exercise plan. And I've worked out really hard for 3 days now. And I'm really disappointed that I'm not in super great shape. It takes time. I know when I meditate regularly, it takes me about 4 weeks before I start to notice a difference in how my brain is functioning. And it's somewhat like riding a bike, a balance between a certain engagement and a certain just utter presence and stepping back from the usual patterns of thought. And that's a new way of functioning neurologically. And it can be tremendously transformative. So I was thinking about that this week and thinking about this metaphor of the mud or the sediment settling. And so I created an experiment to see what this looks like visually. So in the church garden, I poured sand into a large vase. And when I started this project, I thought that it would settle in about 10 minutes, and I was going to make a neat and tidy time-lapse video that would show A to Z, 10 minutes done, and I would then make it even shorter for the purposes of worship. It turns out, just like my thoughts about meditation and exercise, there is no instant gratification here, and this is a far, far better metaphor and example for the reality of mindfulness and use of spiritual technologies and practice. So we're going to go outside to the garden and see how our experiment has gone. Now, I thought it would settle in about 10 minutes, and that would be that. And it has taken 22 hours to get to this point. And you can see, you still can't quite see through it. It will probably take another 24 hours to become completely clear, because that's a lot of sand and a lot of sediment for a relatively small amount of water. So like the sand in this water, it takes time for us to care for our minds and our spirits, and to do so regularly. So let's go back inside the church and have a little practice together at a couple simple breathing exercises that can help ground and center us in a way that we can build on bit by bit, day by day, to help our mind go clear as well. I want to teach you a technique called square breathing. This is something I've used in the hospital with patients when I've served as a chaplain and on a detox unit. The beauty of it is it's very simple, and it does work pretty quickly to calm our nervous system, slow our heart rate, and reduce our blood pressure. So I invite you to get a little comfortable with where you're sitting. Feel the points of contact with the chair or the floor. Wherever position, if you can keep your spine straight and something grounded on the floor, that will help. Take a few deep breaths to get started. Calm yourself and put your hands gently in your lap. You can find a point to gaze at, or you might want to close your eyes And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you gaze at the rose window if you like, because I know for many people it is an image of beauty among our community and one of contemplation. Now for square breathing, you'll inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, and exhale for 4 counts. Wait 4 counts, and then inhale for 4 counts. So on and so forth, like you're tracing the path around a square. Now, everyone's exact counts may vary, your pacing of your counts based on your lung capacity and how you're feeling that day. But to demonstrate, I'll count you off so that we can all take a few breaths together. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Wait, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can adapt this for your own pace depending on where you are at in a given day and your mood and how your body is feeling. Pretty quickly, because we have control the voluntary aspect of our breathing, we can then use that as a tool to impact how our bodies and our minds are functioning. And when we do that, we start to be able to see our world and those around us with greater clarity. It may take time of working on this every day, and it may take time in every session before we really notice a difference. I had a student at one point who was practicing meditation with me, follow her practice for a couple of weeks, and when she met with me for further direction, she said, "Okay, I've been doing it, what next?" And I said, "Well, we just keep doing it." And she said, "But I finished doing it." And I said, "Well, you kind of keep doing it for the rest of our lives. It's like walking or eating nutrition, breathing clean air. These are things that we need in an ongoing way to replenish ourselves. And we often think that our brains will just take care of themselves, but they need care just like every other aspect of us. And when we care for ourselves, that has a really big impact on the world. And that is true. In the writers of that sacred text, remember that the same words pointed to divergent realities that are interconnected. Do we have the patience until our mud becomes clear? And then by stillness, little by little, make what is troubled in the broader world clear. And there couldn't be more of a time when the broader world is troubled, and that time calls for even more clarity of mind and peace that we can cultivate in our own bodies, minds, and spirits. And may a bit of that peace be with you now and in the week to come. Take care.